Hello. Welcome back to Traffic Jam with Cam. This podcast is all about finding who you are, reminding you that you're not alone. And with that, the episode I have for you today is about mindfulness. Mindfulness is something that has helped me find myself better, and I think it will help you too. In today's episode, we have another guest, Maggie. Maggie and I danced together in high school. We were often mixed up, which is an honor. Maggie is also a yoga teacher, and she believes yoga and mindfulness are for everyone. Although I did an episode earlier about the basics of yoga, I wanted to do another episode to dive deeper with Maggie on some more specific topics: breath, grounding, and meditating. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi, Maggie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay, this is so fun. So for people that don't know, Maggie, I'm guessing probably a lot of people that listen know who you are, but Maggie and I went to school together, and we also danced together in high school. And yeah, we're pals. She is an expert in many things, and I wanted to bring her on because I wanted to do kind of a part two to like a yoga topic that I've been talking about on the podcast, and also that I've just been learning more about in life. And Maggie is also a yoga teacher, and she is very knowledgeable. She has an awesome Instagram that is so accessible for people that are just starting out in yoga, and also people that have been doing yoga, right, for a long time. It's just like such a good resource. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, totally. So right now, I just have an Instagram account that I'm working off of, but it's so fun. I love sharing just about, I think yoga is so good for you, and mental, physical, spiritual, like every part of yoga is so good for you. And so I'm like, people just need to know. And if you have an understanding of yoga, if you're thinking yoga is just like doing headstands, you're like, what's like a millionth fraction of yoga is doing headstands. So I'm like, there's so much that can benefit you, and it might not be what you think that yoga is. And so I think it's so amazing. So I really make it my goal to kind of push, look at this little stretch you can do that can make a big difference in your life, or look at this one breathing practice. And that's all yoga. Yoga encompasses so much, and it's so good for you to practice. So I just really want to get that out there for people. Like, look what you can do. This is so accessible. This is what your body needs. That's my goal.
Cool. I love that. We'll talk more about this later in the episode, but I think what I've noticed about you as a teacher and as a person who practices yoga, I noticed that that's like a big thing that you try to emphasize, is that it is for everyone. And so we can get more into that later, but I think that's something that really sticks out about you specifically, and that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so let's do a quick little recap, or I guess you can maybe give an intro first about who you are, maybe just like some fun facts about you, like where you are, what you're doing in life right now, what your hobbies are. Just give us a little rundown of Maggie.
Totally. So like Cameron said, from Idaho, we grew up there together. We went to the same high school, super fun. After high school, I went to BYU, Idaho. I met my husband there. We got married. I got my bachelor's degree, and I found yoga there as well. And so after we graduated, he got into a medical school here in our hometown-ish, kind of like 15 minutes away from our hometown. So we live back where we both grew up, which is so fun. And so he goes to school right now. I do a variety of jobs, including yoga. I teach dance. I do swimming lessons. I work at an elementary school. So I just try to do everything. I figure he's busy, so I can be busy. So I just try to do a little bit of everything. But yoga, I would say, is my favorite thing. It is my hobby that I love it so much. So yoga is for sure my biggest hobby in my life.
Awesome. Very cool. For me, I don't really have a lot new to report. We're going to be moving in like 3 weeks.
Yay! I'm so excited.
Yes, we're so excited too. I can't believe it's like almost here. So yeah, almost done with our time in DC. And so we've been trying to just knock all the rest of the stuff off of our bucket list. And we had Adam's mom and two of his aunts came to visit us before. They were like, we want to come really quick before you leave. And so they came last week, and it's always fun to have visitors and kind of be the tour guides. It's so weird to like at a big city that is such a tourist place. It's weird to be like a resident there or be living there, and then people come to visit because of like the big city is. It's like no one ever comes to Boise to like
It's so true.
vacation to Boise. So totally different vibes, but we did a lot of stuff packed into like 4 days. Did some museum trips. We went to like the Natural History Museum. We went to the Holocaust Museum. We went to the top of the Washington Monument and looked out the window, and you can see like all of DC. And went to some fun food places. Whenever someone comes to visit us, and also when it's just the two of us, we always go to this place called the Custard Shack that is like this hidden gem that's like 20 minutes outside of DC in this tiny little town just right along the Potomac River. And it's actually like a shack. It's in the middle of nowhere, and it's just this tiny little shack, little building where they sell custard, and it's like the best ice cream ever. And we always take people there and try to like get people to go there because it's definitely a hidden gem. So
That's so fun. I
that was
love
a highlight. Those are the highlights, I guess, of this last week. Is we had some fun visitors, got to show them around, do more touristy stuff, eat some good ice cream, and yeah.
Love it. That's so awesome.
It was
So
awesome.
fun.
Okay, so let's do, before we get into the questions that we have for you, let's do a little traffic jam of the week. So you know what the traffic jam of the week is, like something annoying or just like something that was a pain that happens to you or that bothers you. It doesn't even have to be like it just happened to you, just like something that bothers you. So I can give mine first, and then you'll do yours. Is that okay?
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So my traffic jam of the week kind of goes with, well, happened while we had guests here. While Adam's mom and her two sisters were here visiting us, we were trying to ride public scooters. So there are like, DC in general is just so hard to get around. Like I've talked about this many times, like parking is a nightmare. If you take the metro, like the train doesn't always come on time. Sometimes the trains are really far apart. If you take the bus, it's just easy to miss. There aren't like stops in all the places, like they don't always have the most convenient stops. But once you finally get into DC, especially around the National Mall, which is from the Lincoln Memorial to the Capitol, it's actually like 2 miles between the two. So it's quite a lot to walk if you're trying to walk around there. Mm-hmm. So they have these like Capitol bikes, and they have like Lime scooters, and like they have e-bikes, like all kinds of stuff. They have a lot of like stations kind of docked or parked everywhere around there that you can use an app to rent. So we're walking around. We've already been walking around for like 2 hours, and it was so hot that day, and we're outside, and we're like, okay, we need to find a place to go to lunch. Let's just rent some scooters and get them. So I get on my app. My phone was like almost overheating already. So I'm like trying in the sun to like look down and look at that. Like trying to get my phone to work is going so slow. I'm trying to unlock the scooters. We found like six or seven of them, like all lined up, and we're like, surely like some of these are gonna work. And all of them were dead.
Oh my gosh.
I was so annoyed because I was going through scanning all of them, like on the little handlebars that all have like a QR code that you can scan. Mm-hmm. And then once you start your ride, it just like charges you for like how long you ride. So it would be convenient if it was convenient. Like,
yeah, if they actually worked. Yeah.
If they worked. But that was not the first time that has happened, where you go to check out a bike or a scooter and it doesn't work. So that's just one of the many joys of like, it seems like it would be helpful to have lots of modes of transportation, but it ends up being more of a hassle sometimes. So that's my
Yeah.
complaint that I have. It was
Oh,
annoying.
I'm so sorry. That's awful, especially in the heat. The heat is just the
Makes
worst.
everything, it makes you
Yeah.
more angry.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Okay, what's
Oh,
yours?
okay. I was thinking. So like I mentioned earlier, I do lots of things, but I'm a front desk lady at an elementary school. That's my full-time, like 9 to 5 job. Um, But the thing that's been getting me this week is we start school Wednesday. So that's when all the students come back. I've been back for a couple weeks just getting like registration all ready to go. But parents have just been calling in every day and they're like, so when's the first day of school? Who's my kid's teacher? And I'm like, we've sent you emails. You know this stuff. Why do you call? Like it's on our website listed. Like you go to the calendar, first day of school, open house. And these parents, oh, okay, thanks. And I'm like, no,
So many resources that they could go to.
exactly where I'm like, why did you call me? You could have just Googled it. I mean, that's me. I like to Google it if I don't know, and then I'll call. Calling is my last resort. So I'm just always shocked by the number of people that will call in. It's crazy to me.
That's so funny. The last thing you want to do is talk to someone, right? Just look it up.
Exactly. I'm like, why would I do that?
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I'm sure that's not the end of the parents that you'll be dealing with, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure the first day of school will have like 10 kids who don't get picked up, and parents are gonna be like, oh, that's when school got out. And I'll be like, "Huh."
Oh my
So
gosh.
we'll see.
What fun.
So fun. I love it.
Okay, well, that was a great one.
Thank you.
Definitely
Yours was
fun.
great.
Okay, so let's jump into some yoga questions. So I've talked before on the podcast kind of about an overview of yoga, like how there are different kinds, um, what practicing can look like for different people, talked about chakras.
Mhm.
And so now I just want to, like, for this episode, I think it would be cool for us to just like dive a little bit deeper into the mindfulness side of it, and more specifically talking about like breathing and mindfulness, meditation, and kind of how you teach those and what your view is on those things, and then how all of those things can benefit us mentally, physically, spiritually.
Perfect. That sounds great. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Me too. Okay. So you told us a little bit about how you first discovered yoga at when you were in college at BYU, Idaho. Can you talk a little bit more about like what your first class looked like, maybe, or was there a person that told you about yoga? What made you want to look into it, and then how did it go from there?
Yeah, totally. So the first time I ever did a yoga class was like one random church activity. We had someone come and do yoga, and I was like, oh, that was cool. And I felt like a really good experience for me because I was going through some teenage drama stuff, and I was like, man, I feel good. But that was like it. And I let that sit for like 3 or 4 years. And so I was a dance minor in college, and one of the classes that they offered was a yoga class that would apply for my minor. And it was 1 credit. And I figured this is going to be really relaxing. This is going to be good. And I just might as well do it. It's great for me. And it works towards my degree. So I signed up for the class. And like the first day, I didn't even bring a mat. I didn't even know what to expect. I did need a mat. So I had to borrow one. um, but it was a class I did for a semester. But it was, let's see, this summer, January of 2020. Yeah, so the very beginning of 2020, I signed up for a yoga class. We did 2 months of it in person. And those 2 months like changed my life, changed my mindset. And originally when I went in and was taking that class, I was like, the poses are fine. The pose, like, that's fine. I don't really love it. But the mental aspect of it was just so crazy to me. It just taught so much about like the mindfulness and creating new patterns and mental strength. And then along with that, because it was a religious university, we got to tie religion into yoga, which was such a mind-blowing thing for me you don't even think about those things. You're like, yoga is your physical practice. You're just kind of moving your body. You do yoga classes, but yoga was so much more than that. If you break it down, really, like the poses are an eighth of what yoga is, which is so crazy. Everything else is just it's all towards making yourself a better person. And so everything that I learned in yoga was all, I felt like, helping me become a better person. And then COVID happened, and we did like the last 2 months of that class totally on Zoom. And Cody and I, my husband and I, were stuck in our little 1-bedroom apartment. And so it was so crazy to be like, okay, what did we do all day? Like, classes were canceled for a little bit. Neither of us went into work. And so I would just get on my mat and I do a little yoga practice. I do some physical stuff, and then I would do a little meditation. And it was really interesting to see just how a really consistent schedule, really consistent practice changed me. And I felt like I was becoming a different person. And so then through that, I started like finding more influencers on social media to follow, kind of give me some guidance. And after that, I was like, I need to become a teacher. I love this so much. And the reason it was super cool and I felt like I really should become a teacher is because the professor who taught that yoga class has a program where you take specific classes at BYU Idaho in the dance program, and they all go towards your 200-hour yoga teacher certification. And so then at the very end, you do like a week-long intensive. And it was just really cool. I was like, you know what? I might as well. It all goes towards my minor and I get a yoga teacher certification. Like, this is great. And it really changed me as a person, I think. And even like graduating, I was like, I got my degree, but I really love yoga. I think I want to do yoga. And so that's just where I went with. And I've loved it ever since. So after that, let's see, that was almost a year ago, I got my teacher certification. Well, feels like it's been longer.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've gotten a 100-hour training done in yin yoga, which is another fun style. And so I just want to continue to learn. It was such an amazing educational experience for me. There's still so much I don't know and more that I want to get deeper into. But everything I've learned, I felt like has changed me so much. And I love changing and feeling like I'm becoming a better person.
Sweet. Oh, that's so cool. I love
Sorry, it's a big mouthful of an answer.
No, that was perfect. That was like exactly what I was hoping for. I love hearing about people's stories, like when you find your passion and like something that you're really good at and something that you love. It's like, I love hearing about how that got started and then like what brought you to where you are now, because sometimes those things just come up like so unexpected, and it's cool to see like where it goes. So that was perfect. That was awesome. So you're certified to teach, like you said, you did that week-long intensive, right? You did the 200 hours.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about what your teaching experience has been like? I know you have taught in a lot of different places, right?
Yeah.
How has your experience been with teaching? And then also, has that changed at all what your personal practice is like?
Yeah, totally. So when I got started, I was just trying to teach to anyone. I was like, I just need to get out there and do it. So I like subbed a couple classes at BYU Idaho's yoga, which was fun. It's really interesting. You become a teacher and you're like, okay, I did a certification. I learned it all. I'm ready. And then you have to figure out who you are as a teacher. What is your style? What does your class look like? Because you're taught how to teach and you learn all these things, but then you have to figure out who you are as a teacher, which took me a little bit. And so I offered a lot of classes for free. Sometimes you get great turnout, sometimes you get no one, and you're like, oh, live and learn. Now I currently teach at a gym, which is super fun. I love having that opportunity. And then I'll do some pop-up classes here and there. So just kind of fun wherever I can, and then on social media. And so teaching, it took me a while to figure out where I am as a teacher. I was like, am I yin? Am I just going to be a full yin teacher? Or do I do these crazy advanced classes? And so I've landed in between, which what I do right now, because I teach yoga at a gym, what I do is less mental based, like less breath work. I still do a little bit because it matters. Like your breath matters, your mind matters. So we'll always do a grounding. We'll always do a little bit of breathing together as a class. But I just focus on a little bit of slower, longer stretching, because I think not enough people give their bodies the time to stretch. And there are so many different stretches that we can do and different opportunities. So regardless of what skill level you're at, regardless of how flexible or unflexible your body is at, you're still getting a good stretch, what your body needs. Especially, I think at a gym, people go, they work out, they do a little mini stretch and leave. I'm like, no, you need this. You need to sit down and stretch for 30 minutes with me. And so we'll do like 30 minutes of a good like warm up, breathing, getting our bodies ready, and then we relax, stretch, and take a shavasana at the end. We just lay there and breathe, and it's so nice.
Sweet.
I love it. It varies from my personal practice, though. It's just been interesting to see now that I've decided I do more relaxing, stretching, listening to our bodies in my classes. My personal practice is where I have to set goals for myself. I'm like, okay, what do I want to work on today? I always want to do a little check-in. Sometimes I'm like, okay, can I still do the splits? It's dumb, but it matters to me. So I'm like, can I do that? I really dream of one day being able to do a handstand. So I do a lot more strength than I normally would throw into my other classes, just because that's something that I'm personally working towards. And so it's been kind of funny to see like, okay, when I teach, I'm totally this other person. But when I go in for myself, I'm like, come on, go harder. You can do this. Let's try it again. It's okay if you fall over. Versus other people, I'm like, you're doing great. I'm like, no, come on, to myself, you're your harshest critic.
Yeah, of course.
It's just funny to see those differences. I'm like, oh, well, sorry.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, I think that's cool to hear that even still after teaching and having done it for as long as you have, it's like there are still so many more things to like learn and work on and work towards. And there's always strength that you can be building physically and also mentally. So.
Totally. And like things you not grow out of, but you like change from. Like when I started with my teacher, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do the things that she does at the beginning of class because that makes sense to me. But then as I go on, I'm like, well, I think I'll just try something different. And it's not this script that I'm reading from. It's just what I think sounds good and what I think would work if I was hearing it as a student. So, I'm learning along the way and finding my own things. It's a little bit different from what I was introduced to, but it's fun to make it my own and, still effective for a class.
Yeah, that's so cool. I like that. I mean, that has to take some bravery too, right? To kind of branch off from what you knew and kind of how you learned to, okay, I'm gonna make it my own thing now. And I hope people, receive it well.
Yeah, sometimes it totally fails. Sometimes I do it and I'm like, well, that was not good. Sorry, guys. No, pick up next time. You're like, okay, I know what not to do. I figured that out and I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, I love hearing about that. Well, so can you talk a little bit more about what effects that breathing has on the body and also on the mind?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's so important. I love this.
Tell us why it's so important.
Yes. Just like what I said earlier, if you think about it, yoga, we look at it as sometimes the tricky part of it, the physical part of it with our body. And when you break it down, we have our 8 branches of yoga. And one of those branches is the physical practice. And one of those branches is our breath. And so it just goes to show breath is equally as important as our physical practice. Breath is so, so important. It's what gets us everywhere. And pulling from, when I did theater, like breath is what controls our emotions. If you think about it, when you're crying versus when you're angry, your breathing is really different versus when you're sleeping, when you're awake, your breath is going to control what you're doing. So if you're having a hard time sleeping, you just really have to sit there. You have to say, I'm going to slow down my breath, and you let your body slow it down, and then your whole body relaxes with it. So your breath tells your body what you need to be doing, which is super interesting to think about. Your breath controls your emotions. That's what I like to tell younger kids when I'm teaching them. I'm like, think about it. What are you going to do if you're mad? Just things like that. I'm like, it's so true. And so our breath is what will slow us down, will reset us, especially in today's day and age. We live in like a go, go, go setting where we're always moving, we're always doing. And I had an interesting discussion with a friend about this is right now, if you're not contributing to society, you feel like you're less than. But in reality, you need to have that time where you're just contributing to yourself. Sometimes you're thinking, if I'm not giving, then I'm being selfish. But if if you're not recharged, how are you going to help others? So if you're not able to sit with yourself and breathe and let your body relax, you're going to be burnt out. You're not going to be happy. You're going to be so tired. And I go in and out of that totally, where there are times I just push myself and I haven't relaxed in a week, and then I feel miserable because of it. So making sure we're sitting down, breathing, letting our bodies have a full relaxing moment is so important. And that's what I think is really fun about the yoga classes too. At the end of each class, we have our Shavasana, which is you just let your body lay on the mat and you just close your eyes and breathe. It's a little bit different from meditation because there's no goal. You're just laying there and breathing. And people are always like, wow, I needed that. I'm like, yeah, because you don't give yourself time to rest until you're laying in bed at the end of the night. So taking that time, you just breathe, and that is your only thing that you have to do, is so important. It just unlocks everything. Your body is able to recharge and reset. It makes all the difference.
So is that a good thing to incorporate, or that people that maybe have like stressful lives or busy schedules, is that something that, like, if someone made time in the middle of the day on their lunch break or something, if they're like working from home, to like lay down flat on your mat and just like breathe, is that would be helpful to like add in an extra, instead of just like you were saying, waiting until you like lay down to go to bed, like having something during the day?
Totally. That's what I introduced it to my husband, Cody. And so I'd like walk in from my day, and I walk in, he's laying down on a yoga mat and his eyes are closed. And he's like, I'm doing a Shavasana right now. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And he set like a 10-minute timer. And then he's like, okay, I'm recharged. I'm ready to go. And sometimes you'll fall asleep and you just need a nap. That's okay.
Yeah.
But sitting there and just letting yourself relax, if it leads to sleep, so be it. It's just so good for you. Our bodies need that little bit of a break when we live in our go, go, go world.
Yeah. Cool.
I highly recommend it. I'm like, yes, breathe, relax.
Tell everybody, tell your friends, do it.
Exactly.
So what you talked about, like the did you say eight parts of yoga?
Yeah, the 8 limbs of yoga. Yeah.
Could you tell us really quick what those are?
Yes. Okay. I'm like, as long as I can remember them.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, you're good. Worst case scenario, I Google it, because you Google things.
Yes.
So the first 2 are called our yamas and niyamas. And those are, they're basically like the 10 commandments of yoga. You have your 5 yamas, which are things you practice in your daily life, and your 5 niyamas, which are things you practice within yourself. And so they're like honesty, truthfulness, and non-grasping, non-excess living. And it's been really good, like contentment, purity, self-study. It's a lot of those. I highly recommend looking them up, because applying them to your life, I was like, wow, this is crazy. I'm becoming a better person. I love it. So you have yamas and niyamas. You have asanas, which is our physical practice and our poses. You have pranayama, which is your breath. And then you have pratyahara, which is the withdrawing of the senses. So something fun, as I'm going along, I should explain. So yamas and niyamas we practice in our daily life. Our physical practice we do to kind of bring focus to our mind, and our breath is how we really calm our mind. Withdrawing the senses leads us into our meditation. Oh, and then the last 3, I always get tripped up on. Let's see. So we have our dharana next, which is our concentration. That's number 6. Then we have, I might be butchering these names, I think it's dhyana, which is our meditation. And then our 8th limb is samadhi, which is just union with, if you believe in God, with God or with the higher being. Yeah. And so ultimately we're working our way up from becoming these better people to becoming so focused that we're just reaching up to our higher being and reaching our divinity, which is super cool. It's all about growing to become better. And so each step gets us a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Which leads great from our poses to our breath to our meditation to becoming a better person. It all leads up.
That's awesome. Oh, cool. Okay. I did not know that. I'd heard some of those names before, but didn't know like what they meant or how they connected.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things you're like, what? Like, who knew? It blows my mind.
It's like, okay. Yeah. Like the progression. That's a really neat idea.
Yeah. I love it. It's so fun.
Okay. Another thing. Okay. So you mentioned before also that Shavasana is different than meditation because you're not like, it's not like working towards something, right? Or how would you, can you kind of talk about what meditation is? I guess the difference.
Totally. Yeah. So in our meditation, number one difference is you shouldn't lay down in meditation. Shavasana is when you just let everything go. Your brain does whatever, you're just laying there. Meditation, we find a comfortable position, comfortable seated position normally. That doesn't mean you have to be sitting cross-legged. My meditation, I'm like, I'm going to put something up against my back. I'm going to have like a pillow to support me. And I'm going to sit on something comfortable like a chair. And that's where I'm going to find the best meditation. Because if I'm uncomfortable, it's all going to be trash.
Yeah.
But then the biggest thing that sets meditation apart is this intention that we are just going to let go of everything. We have this idea that meditation is having an empty mind, but that's so hard. That's not really possible to achieve just sitting down and being like, ready, set, blank. That's not going to happen. Our meditation is choosing to be an observer of our thoughts. So we sit there and we recognize our thoughts as they come in, but rather than thinking about it and dwelling on that, we just let it go. Because often we'll find the thoughts and I'll think about this. I'm like, oh yeah, groceries. Oh yeah, what am I making for dinner? And it just keeps going down this rabbit hole. But I see it, oh yeah, I need to get groceries. I see that, I acknowledge it, and I let it go. And then the next thought comes in and I let it go. And so it's just sitting there observing your thoughts. You observe these things about yourself. And over time, maybe your mind does clear out a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. That's the thing about meditation is if you put this label on it that it needs to be a clear mind, you're not going to achieve it because you're going to be so focused on having a clear mind. It's all you can think about.
Yeah.
So you just have to sit there and observe and let it go. And the goal of meditation is really to just sit with ourselves. Same as with taking our breath and breathing, we don't just sit with ourselves. If we're sitting by ourselves, we're like, oh, I'll just pull out my phone. That's what I do. I pull out my phone, or I'm going to watch TV, or I'm going to go eat something just so I don't have to sit here and do nothing. But we know that doing nothing is sometimes really good for us. So sitting there and being with ourselves, we come to understand ourselves better, and we're able to reach up towards that higher version of ourselves, closer to the divine.
That's awesome. Right before you explain what the purpose of it was, I was going to ask you, so by recognizing thoughts, acknowledging them and then kind of letting them go, what purpose does that serve, or how can that be good for us? But then when you talked more about how it's just being okay with yourself, sitting with yourself, being okay with doing nothing, not having other things going on, that just helps you to understand yourself more, be more comfortable with yourself, and then get better from that.
Yeah. And I think I found it really special. Meditation was really special for me during COVID shutdown, because I was, I get so in my head about things, and I'm thinking about all these cringy things I did in high school and all these mistakes I've made and all the things that make me not who I want to be, or oh, I did this and this weighs me down. And so rather than sitting there and thinking, my life is so hard and I'm so terrible, I sit there and I meditate and I see that thought come in and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about that. That's cool. And I push that away. And then I'm able to kind of just sit there and recognize these are the thoughts that I'm having. This isn't the person that I am. The thoughts that I'm having is, you're bad because you did this. And I'm like, okay, that's a thought. I don't want to think about that. So we're just going to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And so it's just recognizing, what is your mind telling you and what are you choosing to hold on to? And so if you choose to let go of these things as you see them coming in, you're aware that these thoughts are happening, and then you're choosing to let them go, you really do have a lot more control of who you are and who you want to be, which was huge for me to be like, oh, I don't have to sit here and feel bad. I can choose to just let that go. It was so cool. It changed me. I love it.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to take so much more practice for me to do, but that definitely motivates me more. And I can see how that is connected, the letting thoughts go, not only when you're meditating, but just then throughout the day, when thoughts come, you were saying, if you think about or remember something oh, I'm so embarrassed that I did that stupid thing, and then you start feeling bad or feeling
exactly
oh, I'm so dumb, but just letting that go is that's gonna help yourself so much more. It's gonna not drag you down in the rest of your day so much.
Exactly. Also, I wanted to add to this. I was looking through my yoga journal I kept when I was taking the yoga class. I would just write down all the things I loved that we talked about in class. And I found this super great point. It says, let's see, being mindful simply means having good control over your attention. You can place your attention wherever you want and it stays there. When you want to shift it to something else, you can, which is the same thing we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, developing greater control over your attention is perhaps the single most powerful way to reshape your brain and thus your mind. And so just having that awareness of what am I thinking? Do I want to be thinking it? Nope. And I can let it go is just how you become a different person, because you choose what you want to think about. You control your mind and not your thoughts controlling you.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
I love it. It's so fun.
I love it. That's so great. All right. Grounding. So can you talk about what grounding is and like how you can do it? Because I've heard about how grounding is important. But for people that maybe aren't familiar with it, haven't heard of it, or want to be better at focusing on that, what is that, and how does that like kind of tie into what we've been talking about?
Yeah, so grounding is being present in this moment, which, as we know, our minds don't love that all the time. We're always thinking about something else, or I'm thinking out a different scenario, and I'm not living in this moment. And grounding is so important, especially for if you have anxiety, if you have a hard time focusing, grounding is so good for bringing you back into that moment and letting you just be where you are. And so there are lots of different grounding techniques. I always do grounding at the beginning of my classes. And the way I do it is through breath, because breath is the best. But I'll kind of give you a little rundown of it, which is we find a comfortable seated position. And if we're normally on our mats, you can sit cross-legged or on your knees, wherever you are, and you let your hands relax. And you let your shoulders relax. You can either bring your eyes down to the ground or you let your eyes close. And then slowly you'll just bring your attention to your breath. You notice where it enters your body and where it exits. You find the speed that's comfortable for your body. Sorry, I'm going into my class mode.
No, that's
and
good.
you just breathe in and out. And then slowly we just bring our awareness down to our chest and to our stomach, and we feel our body fill with air as we inhale and come back in as we exhale. So just being really present where your breath is at in that moment. And then we kind of find our comfortable breathing. And then after a minute or so, I invite my class to just kind of lengthen their inhale, maybe pause at the top of the breath, lengthen the exhale, pause at the bottom of our breath. We're just creating a slower breath, kind of getting our minds to relax.
Yeah.
And we're just thinking about our breath as our goal. So if you notice your mind wandered away, that's fine. You just come back to your breath as soon as you notice. And then afterwards, we all sit together as a class and we'll take 3 breaths together, just to be like, we're all centered together in this moment. It's a little unifying moment that I like to do. But yeah, my grounding is bringing your attention to your breath. I know some people it's feeling the things around you, using your senses. If it's like noticing the smells, noticing the background sounds, if it's feeling the things around you, just anything that kind of helps you feel like you're in this moment. So if you're on your phone, like put down your phone, touch the table in front of you, feel that you're here, let your mind recognize that you're here. So there are lots of different ways to do it. I use breath, but I know there are so many other options that work super well. But I'm a breath girl. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of cool that there are lots of different ways that people can do it. Like it sounds like it's really just whatever works for you and maybe what you connect with, but whatever it is, it's a way to stop again from like you're going,
Yeah,
just like notice where you are. And kind of for me, I feel like stopping and doing something like that and any kind of grounding is helpful if I'm ever starting to get panicky about something. Like
totally. Yeah.
That wasn't always something that I dealt with, but just through like different life experiences and like getting older, I feel like there are times and like seasons of my life where I tend to just like panic or like get really
Totally.
like worked up more. And so just when that starts to happen and your thoughts start to kind of like roll and like get bigger and you just think of more things and like just kind of spiral into like negative thinking, grounding's a really good thing to do for that, right? To kind of stop, pause, helps you like think a little more clearly and just like notice where you're at and not let yourself get too far.
Yes. And it's so important. Like as soon as you recognize that you need it, that's when you should do it. And I think it's fun to start that practice of grounding now, or like checking in on your breath, being like, am I breathing really fast? Am I feeling a little bit crazy? Like, do I need to slow down? Because as soon as we get ourselves in that practice of recognizing where we're at, then we can start like being, oh, I need to ground now. And then it just makes us so much calmer. It takes us out of the craziness, and we develop these patterns that help us live a healthier life, and it gives us a stronger mind. And so I think as soon as we can, if we can start creating a pattern now, as soon as you start having that pattern for yourself that you can just ground when you need it, you're going to be so much better. Your life is going to feel a lot easier.
Yeah. And it really is something that you can do whenever, right? Like anyone can just pause, and even just noticing like, this is where I am, my feet are touching the ground, okay, I'm good. Like,
Yes. And I love that it doesn't have to be a big thing. You're like, okay, I'm just going to feel my feet. I'm just going to recognize where my feet are. Are they in my shoes? Are they in my socks? And then like, it's so personal. It can be as intimate as you need it to be. It doesn't have to be a big deal. I love that. You're like, this is what I need. I take my time, and then I can keep going.
Yeah. Sweet.
So fun. I love it.
It's great. Okay. So to finish up, I didn't, write this question down, but it's something that I thought, oh, maybe this could be helpful. So again, I'm probably putting you on the spot here, but
no, I love it.
Could you kind of maybe give an example of steps that maybe the people that are listening could take, like just while they're listening right now, maybe something that they could do, some kind of breathing technique or thing in their head that they can maybe do and use right now while listening to the podcast, and then maybe also tomorrow and the next day, something they can come back to throughout their week or day that they can use for breathing?
Totally. Let's do it right now. Let's do a 4-part breath. Okay. This is my favorite. I love this. And you're going to notice I'm going to slip into my teacher voice. So sorry in advance. So our 4-part breath, it's really good at lowering your heart rate. It just kind of lets your body relax. So if you ever have to get, what is it? I've had people come, they have to get like their blood drawn or something, and they have to get their heart rate checked, and their heart rate's too high. And so then they're like, you do the breathing, and then your heart rate drops and you're fine. And you're like, okay. So highly recommend. It's really great. As soon as you notice that you need to calm down, we'll hop into our 4-part breath. So the way it works is we inhale for 4 counts, pause for 4 counts, exhale 4, hold for 4. So when we inhale, we're trying to get all of our breath in, exhale, get it all out. Here we go. So getting ready, let's go ahead. We'll do it 3 times, and then each time we'll just slow it down a little bit. So first time, here we go. Let's inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we'll take a couple breaths in and out, regular, kind of get our body going. You can see if your breath slowed down a little bit. Maybe it's the same. Either way, totally fine. Just observing. Let's do our second time. Here we go. A little bit slower. If we breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead. Take a couple breaths again. We'll do our last one. This will be our longest one. If you need to breathe, don't be afraid. You don't have to go as long as I'm counting. Just know that your body, if it needs to breathe, then listen to it. Listen to your body over me. That's my biggest advice I'll give. You know if you need air. Okay, last one. Here we go. We breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll return to our regular breathing. Whew. I think it's super nice. It's kind of just the way we trick our brain into creating these longer breaths. Is like, well, I have to breathe in longer. I have to hold. So it's really just a mind game, but it works really well for me to be like, okay, I have to slow down and I have to do it. Yeah. I found it really helpful for me in my life.
Yeah. I can see how that not only, I mean, you're focused on breathing, but also if you're focused on counting before holding it,
Yeah.
going down, that keeps your mind busy doing something else too.
Totally. Yeah. Your whole self is focused on your breathing in that moment. And it's fast. It's not, you don't have to count out loud, you just count in your head. So it can also be really personal if you just need that moment. I'm thinking like at work, I'm like, could I just do it? I'm like, yeah, I could do that at work, like at my desk.
Yeah.
Also for like presentations, if you ever have to give those, they're super helpful because my heart gets going. And so I have to calm it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Okay. Oh, thank you so much.
yeah, of course.
Feels like we got a little sneak peek into
I love it.
Well, those are all the questions that I had written down, or kind of topics that I wanted to talk about with you. Is there anything else before we get off? Anything that you can think of that you want to share? Anything that listeners might find helpful or be interested in?
Yes. So I think I wanted to give you my biggest resources that I use for meditation, because meditation is so great. I really recommend try to put in a daily personal practice. And it can be overwhelming to be like, okay, so I just go meditate? Like, what do I do? But I really have loved, there are lots of good apps out there. I know the Calm app is a good one, Headspace. The one I use is called Insight Timer. And the reason I love it is because you go on there, they do have a lot of like pre-recorded sounds and meditations, but you go on there, they have a little timer you set. I want to meditate for like, maybe I'm feeling 2 minutes. That's what I have time for. And you choose your background sound. You choose the bells you want to tell you to start and end. Or if you're doing a longer meditation, like I'm doing 10 minutes, which feels like a lot for me. And so I can set a timer. So every 2 minutes, it's going to ring a little bell. So I know in my head, okay, it's been 2 minutes, and I can do that check-in. And so that's really nice for me to just kind of customize it to what sounds do I want to hear. And they have all these bells, and it's like, well, which sound do you want? I'm like, ooh, I like this,
Yeah.
So it's been really fun to just kind of hop into those. And it's been helpful for me to have a meditation that feels calming. I could put headphones in and it's like waves on the sand, and that's what I'm listening to. And I love that. That's super fun. And I feel like it feels less scary to jump in and be like, okay, my alarm clock's going to go, like your phone alarm, like, rah, rah.
Yeah.
Here's me. And so I can't use that as my timer.
It seems like a great solution.
Yeah. And I'm like, get a better sound. That's what I need. And then the last thing I just want to say is to listen to your body. You will always know what your body needs. And so as soon as you start to recognize I'm breathing really fast, or I need to calm down, or maybe I've been laying in bed for 30 minutes and I can't sleep, that's when you just check in and you go to your breath. And you know your body better than anyone else. So always trust what you think is best. You'll know, and you just listen to yourself and you make it happen. I think breath is so important. It changes our mind. It changes our lives, in small ways, but it leads to big things. If it changes your mindset, it changes you as a person, and it changes the whole way you live. So I really encourage you to build a daily habit and start doing it, because you'll notice the impact it has. It is so cool.
Yeah. Sweet. Well said.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maggie. It was so good to hear from you. And I, and hopefully all the listeners got some really good tips. And I am excited to try this Insight Timer app.
And I hope you love it. I used it today. I love it.
We're gotta add that to my routine. Like, that's a good way to, and like a fun new thing to try.
Right, it feels special.
Yes, that's awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Traffic Jam with Cam. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a rating and review so that the podcast can reach more people. I post new episodes on Monday mornings, and you can find me on Instagram at Traffic Jam Podcast. Talk to you next time. Bye.